The Justice Department last night released a new trove of documents related to convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein, including never-before-seen files pertaining to President Trump. We're learning the FBI in 2019 interviewed a woman who accused President Trump of an attempted sexual assault. The president has denied any wrongdoing in connection with Epstein. In a statement, White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt said these are completely baseless accusations backed by zero credible evidence from a sadly disturbed woman who has an extensive criminal history. CBS News Justice correspondent Scott MacFarlane joins us now. Scott, what more do we know about her allegations?
That there were 4 interviews involved with this accuser, but the White House has emphasized what has been shown so far. These are unproven allegations, unfounded allegations of sex misconduct by Donald Trump.
While everyone's distracted by whatever political drama is dominating the headlines today, the Justice Department has been quietly handling something far more serious with the Jeffrey Epstein files. And now, new revelations suggest they may have been hiding critical information specifically when it comes to President Trump.
A new NPR investigation reveals the Justice Department withheld portions of the Jeffrey Epstein files that contain allegations involving President Trump, including material tied to claims that Mr. Trump sexually abused a minor, and that some pages mentioning him were removed from the public record. Democrats on the House Oversight Committee called that out today, saying the DOJ's withholding of information could amount to a crime.
Let that sink in. An investigation reveals the Justice Department withheld portions of the Epstein files that contain allegations involving President Trump, including claims that he sexually abused a minor, and Democrats on the House Oversight Committee are now saying this could amount to a crime. But that's not all. We're also learning that the FBI actually compiled a detailed list of these allegations against the president.
Here with us now, and Evan, there's been a lot of speculation about President Trump being named in these files, and we're learning now the FBI actually compiled a list of allegations related to the president back in August. What are you learning?
Right, so this was in 2025 that the FBI compiled a list of all of these sexual assault allegations that involved the president of the United States, that some of them stretch back years, decades, that were associated with this case. And we don't know what of anything is actually credible here. As a matter of fact, we believe that a lot of these could not be verified. Some of them were second and third hand accounts that people were relating things.
So the FBI put together a list of sexual assault allegations involving the sitting president of the United States, and the Justice Department still chose to withhold parts of those files from the public. They talk endlessly about transparency, yet when the allegations point at the most powerful man in the country, suddenly some pages just disappear. How convenient. This isn't some small oversight. This is the same Justice Department that spent months reviewing these files, only to get caught hiding damaging information about the president. And the question now is simple. What else are they still hiding? Coming up next, we'll show you the massive document dump they were forced to release, and why even that release is raising more questions than answers. After learning that the Justice Department may have hidden damaging allegations against President Trump, you would think they'd finally release everything without holding back. But that's not what happened. Instead, they were forced to dump an enormous amount of material, and even then, serious questions remain about what they chose to keep hidden.
The Department of Justice releasing its remaining documents from the Jeffrey Epstein investigation. Deputy Attorney General Todd Bland saying the records will be posted throughout the day, including more than 2,000 videos, more than 180,000 images. Some of the material so explicit, you have to verify being an adult before you can actually access it.
Many of Epstein's survivors have been publicly pushing for years to have these documents come out, but it took a law passed with near unanimous support in Congress to finally bring these documents to light.
Victims of Mr. Epstein have gone through unspeakable pain, and there's nobody that should say anything differently. And I to the extent that there's frustration, I understand where that comes from, just from what we know about Mr. Epstein. I hope that the work that the men and women within this department have done over the past 2 months.
3.5 million pages, more than 2,000 videos, 180,000 images. That's the scale of what the Justice Department was finally forced to release. And let's be clear, this didn't happen because they suddenly decided to embrace transparency. It happened because Congress passed a law with near unanimous support after years of victims fighting for these documents to see the light of day. For years, Epstein survivors have been pushing for full disclosure. They've gone through unspeakable pain, and many of them have waited far too long for any real accountability. But it took an act of Congress to finally make the Justice Department move. Even with this massive release, we already know they didn't give us everything. We know they tried to withhold information involving the president. We know they botched redactions so badly that victim information was exposed. And we know that powerful names are still being protected by heavy redactions. So the question isn't just how much they released. The real question is, what did they try to keep buried? Because if they were willing to hide allegations against the sitting president, what else is still sitting in those files that the public isn't allowed to see? Coming up, we'll show you how badly the redactions failed and why a federal judge had to step in and force the Justice Department to fix their own mistakes. But it wasn't just what they tried to hide that caused problems. It was how badly they handled the release itself. The Justice Department's redactions were such a mess that a federal judge had to step in and force them to fix it. In New York, Judge Richard Berman publicly ordered the DOJ to correct serious redaction errors after victim names and images were accidentally exposed to the public. Thousands of documents had to be taken down from the department's website. The mistakes were so obvious and so harmful that the judge eventually canceled a scheduled hearing only after the government finally did what it should have done from the beginning. Let that sink in. The same agency responsible for protecting victims and releasing these files screwed up so badly that a federal judge had to embarrass them into doing their job. And this wasn't a small mistake. This was a systemic failure in how they handled one of the most sensitive document releases in years. But here's where it gets even more revealing. Two members of Congress, Republican Thomas Massie and Democrat Ro Khanna, were given access to the unredacted files in a secure setting. After reviewing the real documents, both lawmakers came to the same conclusion. At least half a dozen powerful men are being shielded by heavy redactions. A Republican and a Democrat, who rarely agree on anything, reviewed the same files, and both said the public is not getting the full story. They can't name the names publicly because the files are still classified. But they made it clear that powerful people are being protected, and the redactions are doing more than just hiding victim information. This is no longer just about sloppy paperwork. This is about whether the Justice Department is actively shielding influential men from accountability. Even with this massive release, the Justice Department still couldn't resist adding one very convenient disclaimer. Buried in their press release, they warned that some of the documents contain untrue and sensationalist claims about President Trump, claims that were reportedly submitted to the FBI before the 2020 election. They didn't say which claims were fake. They didn't point to specific pages. They just dropped millions of documents and told the public, "Trust us, some of this might be lies about the president." How convenient. Meanwhile, judges, federal investigators, and certain members of Congress were given access to the full, unredacted files. They got to see the real names, the real connections, and the real allegations without the black bars. Here's what that actually means. Redacted files are like reading a story with half the sentences blacked out. You know something happened, but you don't know who did it, when they did it, or who else was involved. Unredacted files remove those barriers. They show the full picture. The public is left with a heavily edited version and a vague warning. The people with real power get the complete story. And that gap between what they know and what we're allowed to see is exactly where the danger lies, especially when it comes to the President of the United States. So where does all of this leave President Trump? We still don't have the full picture, but we do know this. Federal judges have already seen unredacted files that mention him. The Justice Department has admitted that some of those files contain allegations against the president, and behind closed doors, investigators and members of Congress are quietly reviewing material that the public will likely never see in full. Even if no new charges are ever filed, that doesn't mean there is no legal exposure. When judges have access to unredacted evidence, that evidence can still be used to build cases, support investigations, or influence future legal decisions. The machinery of justice doesn't need headlines to keep moving. What we've seen so far is clear. Nothing moved until there was real public pressure. Judge Berman didn't force the Justice Department to fix its redaction mistakes because he felt like it. He acted because victims complained loudly, and the errors were too obvious to ignore. Massey and Khanna didn't go public with their concerns just to score political points. They spoke because they knew people were demanding answers. The system doesn't fix itself. It only responds when enough pressure is applied from the outside. Right now, that pressure is the only reason we've seen any movement on these files at all. The Epstein documents are not going away. The questions about who is being protected and why are not going away. And as long as there's a gap between what powerful people get to see and what the rest of us are allowed to know, this story will continue. If you want to stay on top of what's really happening with these files, not the redacted version, subscribe to U.S. Inside Justice and turn on notifications. Because the next chapter in this story is still being written behind closed doors.